really cute. Aren't you cute in your little tattoo? I
Oh,
love it.
geez. I have very few things that I can wear that they don't show at this point. I have so many, so I stopped trying.
You know, I have a tattooed daughter, my daughter Destiny, who's an amazing singer and all, but she's my tattooed girl, and everything has meaning. You know, her first tattoo is my picture, my album picture on her arm. So how do you fuss when she's got her mama on her arm?
Okay, that's hilarious. When I first told my parents, and it wasn't the first tattoo, but at one point I got like my dad's life verse, and then I got my mom's, and I thought the same thing. You can't be mad at me because
Right.
these
There's
are
Jesus.
too.
Well, and she would say, you know, he has tattooed our names on his hand. And, you know, she started begging for tattoos at 16, and I would talk her out of it because she couldn't have one then anyway. And then at 18, we went through the whole thing. You'll get tired of it. You don't want them. On her 21st birthday, she looked at me and said, love you, Mom. You know where I'm going. And it's so much part of her. I love it. She's got wings on her back and everything. The thing I realized, I hate pain. That's my whole problem. I don't like pain. So why get a tattoo and hurt? But I really admire it. And I've grown to love certain artists. I mean, they are true artists. So
that's so true. They really, I think people
like it. Go talk to somebody else.
Right. But people don't give them enough credit. I think sometimes they really are beautiful, true artists and craftsmen, you know, in their work. So,
and I was a kid, it was earrings and makeup, you know.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. I've actually, so I grew up in the Nazarene denomination, and my mother and both my sisters eventually got their ears pierced, but I never did. And so I would always joke with them that, you know, but I don't have any piercings. I have ink, but I don't have any piercings.
You know, my mom, she had me do everything first. I was the first to have a pair of jeans because I grew up, you know, Pentecostal. You had no slacks. You couldn't wear sleeves above the elbow. You had to cover the elbow because God knows those are too sexy. You know, no makeup. So the girls would curl their eyelashes with Vaseline on a brush and put Vaseline on their mouth. So I was the one that had the makeup first, the jeans first, had the first earrings, you know, kind of thing. And then she, you know, 6 months later or so, she'd say, you know, well, Reba's getting away with it. She's singing on stage with us. So isn't it funny to look back?
That is so interesting.
You know, I honor, if anybody's conviction is whatever, I so honor that and celebrate it. My little grandmother, my mom's mom, she never drank a Coke. She never drank anything out of a bottle because in her mind, if it came out of a bottle, it must not be right. Now, she had them later on in life. She had Cokes at her house, but she never drank one. But whatever's your conviction, I honor that, but I just ask you to honor mine. Isn't that great?
I think that shows so much wisdom, and I hope that my daughter sees that in me. I definitely, you know, my parents and I, the generation gap is wide, and I don't think they would be able to say that to me. If this is what you think, I mean, they would definitely say I still love you or whatever, but they would say, oh, but you're so wrong. I so appreciate that.
My mother, Dottie, was only 17 when I was born. Yeah, she played with me like a baby doll. Yeah, so it was, and see, I was an older mom, not because I wanted to wait, but because I had 3 miscarriages. I had 3 major corrective surgeries. So I was, 37 when I had my first child, and 39 when the second one. Yeah. So I was an older mom. Yeah. Yeah. But,
and then how many siblings do you have?
I'm it. I'm an only child. It's just me. Wow. Yeah, which explains a lot. Yeah, just me. Now I know you have 2 baby sisters, 2 younger sisters.
I do. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. Yeah, and yeah, there's enough of an age gap between us that it's almost as though we were 3 only children in a way, because we weren't ever, they moved away when I was 17. My whole family moved to Detroit from Southern California. And so one sister was in middle school, one sister was in high school, and I had just gotten married. So, and we were all still in our, I mean, I was still a teenager. So I missed out on a lot of that, like getting to become friends with them kind of a thing. And I'm so grateful that now, today, I can't say we're all in our 40s anymore because I'm 50 now, but I love that we have become like inseparable true friends.
Isn't that
beyond
awesome?
a sisterhood. And given the fact that now we're dealing with so much of our parents' health is somewhat rapidly deteriorating, we need each other.
I was watching you on Dinner Conversations with my little brother, Mark Lowry. You know, we met when he was 11 and I was almost 17, and we've been friends since then.
No way.
Yeah, no, I prayed for an older brother, and God sent me Mark Lowry, and he also sent me Dusty Wells, who I think you may know.
Oh yes, I love Dusty.
Dusty and I, we've been besties for 38 years. So, but yeah, Mark is like that with me. But I prayed for siblings. But it's so awesome. And like with me, my girls, my oldest daughter is in her 40s, Dion. And she was my bonus deal whenever I was married. She was 3 years old. And then Destiny is in her 30s. And Israel, my son, is in his 30s. So I have a boy. You have Solomon, and I have Israel. How spiritual are we?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. Yes. Do you have any grandbabies?
You know, I have one who is 6 foot tall.
What?
My oldest daughter, Dion, she has a son, Dyson, who's 16, and he's 6 foot tall, and he's like, you know, hey, Gran Reeves. You know, they call me Gran Reeves, and even my chosen grandchildren call me Gran Reeves. But I mean, when his voice started changing, he walked in the door the first time. It happened so fast with his voice changing, and he was, hey, Gran Reeves, and I'm like, where did my life go? So Destiny and Israel now are both married, have been, but no more grandbabies. And I keep bugging. I said, you know, I'd like to enjoy them and not be in a hub around, you know, when they're born. I'd really love to be able to get out with these babies. Yeah, because I'm 68. I'll be 69 in October, so I'm almost 20 years older than you, girl.
Yeah. Do you know what I love? I love that it seems, well, first of all, I think that we have we've followed interestingly parallel paths, unbeknownst to either of us. And I love that we both seem very comfortable just like throwing our age out there. And I remember, I don't know, talking to other women who did not ever want to reveal their age, you know, like it was some big mystery. And
my mother, it was the mystery till her death.
I'm so grateful for my experience and my journey and what I've learned along the way, and I'm where I am because of how old I am, and I still feel like a late bloomer. I still feel like I'm just getting started. So
20 years from now, you're probably going to feel that way. And you know what? Inside, I feel like I'm about 30. It's about the age I feel on the inside. And then sometimes when I jump up to try to do something or run here or run there, and I go, oh yeah, you're 68. But aren't you glad we still think young? And you with your grandbaby now, tell me about having a baby, grandbaby.
Well, he'll be 2 in May. And she's actually pregnant with her second. So that baby's due. We don't know what it is. They don't find out. So that baby's due in June. So I'm still planning on making a trip to Montana in June for the birth, although it's going to look very different than it looked, 2 years ago. We don't get to be in the hospital or anything like that. But it's hard having a grandbaby far away. Yeah. And we exchange pictures and we FaceTime, and I always make sure I wear my Mickey Mouse sweatshirt so that he associates me with Mickey.
Yeah.
But he reminds me so much of Solomon when Solomon was little. He looked just like him, just a little towhead, smiley, funny, inquisitive, and he's kind of like a little thinker. Like you kind of have to win him over a little bit, and
I love that.
Amazing. Yeah.
I love that. You're so cute, and I want to. First of all, I feel like I'm just having a conversation with a girlfriend, and if somebody's listening, great. Shundo. If they're not, that's fine too. But I wanted to tell you, I loved your short hair the minute you cut it. Let's talk about hair for a minute.
Yes,
because here I am, the old girl with this hair, but you're so brave. I'm just not. I realize looking at your tattoos and your hair, I guess enough of another generation. I'm just not as brave as you, but you are just like a pixie darling, an Audrey Hepburn darling. I did wear red lips today. When I wore red lips in your honor, because I seldom wear them. I thought she's probably going to have red lips.
It makes me so happy. Well, I had this really interesting experience recently, this memory that popped up that I had completely forgotten about. I had a girl private message me on Instagram, and she said, "Hi, my name is Leslie, and I don't know if you remember, but I cut your hair in high school." And I'm thinking, why does she even talk? I didn't even like dawn on me immediately. And then I remembered that my best friend and I used to go together and get our hair cut. And I had this girl, Leslie, and she was this punk chick she just was the coolest girl. And one time she cut my hair, our parents would just drop us off and we'd get our hair cut and they'd come pick us up because we were like 14, 15 years old, didn't drive. So one time my mom came and picked me up, and Leslie had, it wasn't this cut, but it was like really short in the back where you could see my skin kind of, and it was just so cool, like longer on the top, very kind of 80s, And my mother, she put me in the car, she went back in, she refused to pay. She gave this woman a big old talking to, and so recently, this is like maybe a month ago, this girl messaged me. And so we had this little point of like, connection and remembering. But I thought, I guess I have been doing weird things, unexpected things to my hair since I was a kid. And this is my first time since I'm 18, I think, that this is my natural color.
Oh, so, I like it.
I shaved my head last year.
Yeah.
And it grew back brown.
I came to see you when you filmed a thing at Cotton Mill. Wasn't that the name of the Nashville Cotton Mill? And you were so cute when you came bebopping out there in that little shortcut and that little fluffy little thing that you had on. I was so jealous. I thought, look at her. She looked like a little teenager running around out there. And girl, you sang it to the ground. You punished it. It was awesome. It was so great.
That means so much to me. Thank you.
No, it's true. I don't lie. I may be a lot of things, but a liar I'm not. But no, it was fabulous.
I feel like I used to be a good liar. Like in high school, I got away with a lot, and now I do not have a poker face to save my life, and I'm very bad at it.
Well, I had Reba Rambo for a mom who was very prophetic and very much a seer, and she could see right through everything. So I just gave up trying because she could be on the road and call me saying, Reba Faye, and I was praying for you and blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh shoot, busted again.
That's incredible. That's really interesting. That was not my experience with my mother. But
really?
No.
Let's talk a minute about your mom, because I'm aware in your dinner conversation with Mark, your mother is struggling with Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
But yet she still plays the piano.
Yes, and I think every few weeks now it's kind of elevated or ramped up a little. We hit new lows. It's kind of accelerating right now, but the piano, that's what it's been such a lifesaver, not just for her, but for us, because it's a tool for us to distract her. And 9 times out of 10 now, it works. There are those weird moments now where she's like, no, I don't, she's kind of defiant these days, but it has been just a beautiful gift. And that's, I mean, she's my beginning, you know, she's why I sang initially, and she's the person, the reason that I have any musical, I don't want to say gifting, because I know she didn't give me, you know, the gift
No, I
of music
understand.
necessarily, but she nurtured it. And if it wasn't for her, I
Yeah.
I likely would not have pursued it the way that I did.
Right. Well, and my mom, of course, was such a character. I mean, the first woman that I had ever seen play a lead guitar, you know.
Really?
Yeah, women best in gospel. Are you kidding? First of all, there were hardly any women songwriters unless you were dead, like Fanny Crosby. You could have songs as you were dead. But with mom playing that lead guitar, and she was so brave in writing those songs, and what a pioneer she was. But mom, even more than music, she instilled a love for words in my heart, for lyrics. I mean, I have seen her, like I would be talking or someone else talking and say a word like atmosphere. And she'd go, atmosphere. And you could just tell she was tasting it in her mouth, atmosphere.
Ooh.
And she'd say, get my book. And I'd go get her little book and she'd say, write that word down and a little thought about it. But she savored words like a chef does a great steak or something. And she taught me the deliciousness, if you will, of lyrics and words. And I think that if I had to pick one gift that's my strongest gift, is I'm a lyricist. I'm not a musician. I'm pretty good with melody and certain things, but the way your mom you nurtured that gift of music in you, my mom nurtured that gift of lyric and words. And my mother taught me how to hear, because mother could be in a restaurant with 3 conversations going on and hear them all. And she was a great listener. But my dad was an artist, and later on in life did some great paintings. But dad we'd go out, say in the autumn, and there would be a hillside with trees, and he'd say, what do you see? I can't tell you how many hundreds of times he would look at me and say, what do you see? And he taught me to see, she taught me to listen. But I'd say, well, I see trees of green, no. And he'd say, what shade of green? And he also taught me to celebrate. We go to the paint stores. I'm not talking about the artist paint. I'm talking about Benjamin Moore. And all the great cards with the names of all colors. I want to meet that person that names all those great paint colors. And he'd say, I want you to memorize as many shades as you can of color. So he taught me to appreciate the difference between sage and pistachio or whatever. But he taught me to see, mother taught me to listen. And I'm sure your mother taught you so much with that piano. I have a dear chosen daughter named Evie, who's a vocal coach and has really helped me the past few years. But her mom had Alzheimer's, and she died one Christmas Eve night, going into Christmas morning. And the one thing she could still relate to was Rambo music, not other music, just Rambo music. So if my daughter Evie would start singing any Rambo song, she would join in. So till she passed, all night long that night, we sang Rambo songs until her mom breathed her last. It was an awesome experience. But I know a little bit about what you're going through and what I walked through with Mark's mom, with Beverly, and Mark Black's mom, and to see her, I mean, 2 or 3 days before she passed, still singing those songs, not knowing sometimes she wrote the song. She would sing the song and not remember she wrote it.
Wow.
What a blessing to have that place to connect. What a blessing for you and for your sisters.
Well, maybe you don't know, I feel like Tim maybe told you this, and I think I told you this before, that I sang all day dinner. I mean, I had to have been like 8 years old or 9,
my goodness,
something like that. And my mom was so into your mom, which I just think, yes, she loved Dottie. So I knew of her and you because of my mom. So I might have to go dig through some of her, there's so much in storage now, but some of her old like songbooks and sheet music and stuff. I'll bet you I could find some Rambo music in there.
That's great. You know, all day dinner was crazy because, you know, I always loved, I loved so many of the girl groups, like the Andrews sisters, the Pointer sisters, you know, those kind of, those
Yes.
harmonies, hey. And so I remember I'd been listening to actually to the Andrews sisters, and this thing kept going around in my head, you know, anyway, about all day dinner. But I thought, well, how can I do that? And I couldn't have somebody crawl in my own head and figure out the parts. I don't write music, so I couldn't do that. So God love Phil Johnson. We went in the studio and did the first part, and then added the others and say, well, let's try the harmony this way. And it was, you know, back in the day, you didn't have a lot of options recording. And of course there was no, what do you call it, pitch thing that you could, so many singers now, when you hear them live, you want to go, is that the same person? But it was fun. It was fun. We should do something together sometime.
I need to get back out to Nashville.
I'm not as good as you. I'm not as good as you. No, because I'm 20 years older, so my range is not quite up to speed as what it used to be. But we could do something fun. I love what you did with Yolanda Adams, girl. You worked it with Yolanda.
I loved that song that we did together, and she and I actually met when I was 19 in Detroit at a Young Artists for Christ like workshop conference thing that was committed to one of those guys. And I have a photo somewhere of, you know, I'm 5 foot. I don't even know if I was 5'2" yet at that point.
My face.
I was not tall, and she's, you know, 6.
Oh yeah.
And I had white hair in this little flip, and our contrast was just so dramatic. And it was so cool that over the years I've done like the different things that I've done with Kirk Franklin. She's done a couple of those things with us, and then to do that song, This Too Shall Pass, on the Sisters Project was so great. And you know what? It's almost impossible to find. It's not on iTunes. It's not anywhere.
Yeah.
There's somebody put it on YouTube. It's not a video. It's just, you know, the music. But
you got the best big smile you ever saw.
Oh, ever.
Yeah. That smile of hers, it takes up the whole TV screen, and I'm like, that is you've got a great smile. Beautiful.
Well,
teeth.
you have a beautiful smile, Reba.
Well, you're sweet. You're sweet. You know, I was thinking about you with Kirk Franklin when you did the Grammys. What year was it? 1999? Bono or something like that.
I think it was 99. Yeah, 98 or 99, something like that.
Yeah, and you got to sing with Bono, and you got to do the Kirk Franklin thing and be there. How fun was that?
It was so exciting. And it's like technology was so not a thing at that point.
Right.
So I literally have 0 photos from that experience, like of me and Bono or me and Mary J. Blige or whatever. Nothing.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube video somewhere, and that's it.
I understand. We have, and not trying to just throw names out, but we did a lot of things. You know, Elvis loved our family. Used to fly us to Vegas every time when he sang, but no, you didn't just whip out a camera with Elvis and say, let's make it. And nobody had a phone with a camera. Right. But some things in life, like even when we did the Grammys in 1980, well, we actually did them in 81 for 1980 with Andre and B.J. Thomas and Walter and Tremaine Hawkins and Cynthia Clausen and the Archers. Who whipped out a camera? I mean, there were times one of the best moments in my life was backstage sitting by Barbara Streisand, and I'm just trying to sit there. And I thought, now, baby, I've been whipping that camera out, said, smile, girl. But there's so many moments that are just in my head, which is kind of sad. It's kind of sad. But yet, weren't we blessed to have those moments, girl?
Yes, so much so. And I'm, so grateful that lo and behold, they happened in our lifetime. Insane. Okay, I want to ask you about this. Obviously, the reason we're having this conversation, number one, is because your record is being released. So there's so many.
Today, May 1st, it's coming out today everywhere.
So I think something that people fail to understand that are not are just who are music listeners, music lovers, whatever, that when we release a project, and I know this is a little bit different because this was released years ago and now this is the first time it's being digitally. It was what?
40 years ago. It was
no.
Yeah, wow. 40. Count them.
So, regardless of the fact that these songs were written and recorded, past tense, in the present, this being released right now, so what I think people fail to understand is that this is a really big deal to us.
Yeah.
Anytime we put something out there, this artistic endeavor that we have spent, I mean, countless hours. I don't keep track of them. Right. Sometimes songs take years to write. Sometimes projects take months, to complete.
Sure.
And it's always like giving birth. It's always like this new thing that it's like a nail biter, and it's so exciting and so thrilling. It's never old hat. It's never like, oh yeah, it's just work. It's what I do. It's no big deal. Ever. It's always like this really personal, intimate gift that we're having to
love it. Well, they love it. Well, they hate it. Is the baby pretty?
Yeah. And yeah, it's so interesting. So I want people to know that this is a big deal on so many levels. Mm-hmm. So first of all, tell me about the record and what you remember about making it. This is another thing that I very rarely took cameras into the studio. So right. I don't know how much like footage or.
No. And when I did my part of the record, I would be in the vocal booth in the dark. Maybe one of those little tiny light bulb things, that they would know she's still in there, she's still breathing. But no, because it was like standing there naked, if you will. You know that. And you're trying all these things, and you take all kinds of risk as a vocalist, and especially back then, 40 years ago, I did too. I didn't know what I was doing. I never had a voice lesson at that point. I didn't know anything, but you just have these things in your head and you try to go for them, and you're influenced by a lot of great singers around you, because we all glean. Mm-hmm. But I had been through, one of the worst times in my life, 1979. It was just horrible. And I had been very suicidal. It was a bad deal. And but I've learned something, and I know you do it too. I've learned to write my way out. Even when I don't want to write, even when I want to say, pen, you stay there on that desk. Paper, you stay in that notebook there. I would find myself, if I didn't write on pen and paper, I would be singing out loud till I finally would break down and get the pen and paper and begin to write what became this project, Confessions, which, even to call, back 40 years ago, to call a project Confessions, everything was, he is alive, or praise the Lord, or whatever. But to actually have a confession as a Christian, because it was very much the school of, you didn't talk about your sickness, you didn't talk about your pain, and heaven forbid if you had some mental illness or depression or addiction, good grief. We were too saved to talk about that. So to begin to be vulnerable enough, and so I began writing it for me. I wasn't writing for a record. I was writing it because I had to. It was all this. My mom used to say, what goes down in the well comes up in the bucket. Well, because we're so down into my well, there had been so much sorrow and disappointment and shame, and I was so angry with myself. I was tougher on me than anybody. So from that well it began to come up in the bucket, and to even say I'm hurting, to even admit you're the guy in the ditch, because before then, when I'd written songs, I was always the good Samaritan. I was never the guy in the ditch. Are you kidding me? Because I was saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, and that with fire, with signs following, So I, to be able to say, I hurt. I want to give up. Because when I wrote songs like Don't Give Up, it meant I was singing to myself, because everything in me wanted to give up, whatever the heck that means. And I had been so betrayed. So many that I thought were going to be with me were not. And you know what that feels like. The Judas kiss was happening, on a regular basis. And I'm not trying to say that to be pitiful. I'm just saying that's where it was, because people did not know how to handle divorce. They did not know how to handle the things. It's like the thing today is, how do you handle if you have a child who's struggling with orientation? How do you handle that? Back then, divorce, in the Rambo family, there had not been a divorce. And there are 13 kids in my dad's family. He was one, and there had not been a divorce.
Wow.
So it was like a rough, tough thing to go through. But you know how God is so good that you don't even realize that you're giving your journey a voice. You're giving the pain a way to speak. And not just the pain, but the hope of, there will be better days ahead. A hope of the song that the album ends with, A Perfect Heart. Bless the Lord who reigns with beauty. Bless the Lord who reigns with wisdom and with power. Bless the Lord who reigns my life with so much love. He can make a perfect heart. That little praise and worship song was my aha light bulb moment of, God, you're doing something in me. In the middle of all this crap, if I can say that I just did, in the middle of all this mess, you are doing something. You're doing something in me, even when I almost didn't want him to.
And it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. Because I was angry with God. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I was, God, you're not acting like I want you to. Why didn't you fix this thing? And for a while, a minute there, I blamed him. And I didn't like him too much. And you know what? He loved me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He could handle my thoughts. He could handle my anger. He could handle my words. He never turned his back on me. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? He never turned his back on me. And that was when I really began to love him in a way like I did as a child. When I was a little girl, I had very unusual experiences with the Lord. Behind my grandmother's land, there was a forest there, and I would get up early in the morning and go out there and in the forest. And on three different occasions, the Lord came and played with me when I was a little girl. He came and played among the animals with me, sang with me. And there was an intuitive, intrinsic knowing of who he was. I'll never forget going back to my grandmother's house, and some of my uncles were there. They were going to go coon hunting. And I started talking about the man in the woods. And they're freaking out. What man in the woods? What man in the woods? Did he touch you? Did he hurt you? Yeah, he touched me, all right. And but that was the first time I learned you don't tell the big people everything that happens. I told them, and then once I finally said it was Jesus, of course, then they start patting your head going, isn't that a sweet child? What a great imagination. The second time it happened, I told my grandmother, and she was like, baby, that's so sweet, but shh, don't tell anybody. The third time, I didn't tell anybody because I realized there was something odd about it. Now I know how supernatural and precious it was, but as a child, you listen to the big people, so you learned to not talk about it. I love Madeline L'Engle's book, Walking on Water. Yeah. And when she starts talking about how children, if you ask a small child, have you ever seen an angel? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It's only when we get older that we stop seeing angels a lot of times. But I had a very spiritual encounter, many, with the Lord when I was a little tiny girl. And so through confessions, it was almost like I got introduced to that Jesus, the one whose love was so unconditional.
I think I'm assuming that, and I feel like you've kind of alluded to this already, that writing a record and releasing a record, getting a Christian record label to release and put out an album that was so different from everything else that was being put out. Did you have a fight with the power over that?
You know what was such a blessing is Ralph Carmichael was head of Light Records, and Ralph was a little bit older, but he still has that vision, that he's very much a visionary. And when I sat through tears and said, I want to tell my truth. I want to tell my truth. Is that okay? And I remember him, really absorbing it. And I was sitting in a meeting with my friend Judy Gossett and him. and just trying to say it's time that we acknowledge we hurt. I'm hurting. I need a savior, and I also need some Jesus with skin on. That would be great too, you know.
And so do
And
other people, and that's what you're giving
so
them.
do other people. So do other people. So he took a big risk, and there were certain radio stations that would not play, but there were enough that did.
Ooh.
There were enough that did. Yay!
Gosh,
Some were just so angry because of what I'd gone through, and you know, I even had publishing companies say, if you'll just tell your story, if you'll just tell all the bad stuff that happened to you, then you'll be accepted. And I'm like, I'm not doing a tell-all, because
right.
first of all, I have to tell all I did. You know, it's seldom one person's fault when something like that falls apart. No. And that's not, you know, because the Lord told me, he said, you speak life, you speak kindness, and it will come back to you. And so I for the most part, I managed to be nice, you know. And so did he, which was great. But you know what? I think today, I was listening again a couple of days ago to Confessions, and I've really encouraged people that if you get a chance to download the project, pick a night, maybe a stormy night, light a candle, and pick a spot of time that you get 45 minutes to an hour to sit there and to follow the journey of Confessions, because we really pretty much recorded it sequentially the way the songs came.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah. And to kind of go on a journey with me, you know, and some of the feels maybe a little bit dated, but you know what? I've been amazed, Crystal, how they've stood up. Just like some of your music, I've been on a journey the last couple of weeks listening to some of your stuff, and you're somewhere over the rainbow when you were just a teenager. Isn't it interesting that the way both of us, our lives were built so much around that song?
Yes, so interesting. It was pivotal.
Yeah, I was 25 when I first recorded Somewhere the Rainbow. You were what, 15 or something?
15,
16. You were,
yeah.
you were young.
16, I was 16 when I recorded it, yeah.
Yeah, and of course my song Land of Ooze and Oz from Lady, the whole thing was built on what the epiphanies that happened, you know, reading The Wizard of Oz. But it is interesting, girlfriend, to see our lives, so many of the things that pass, and to see, I imagine if we could pour some more tea, that the things we have, our thoughts have changed. I used to be very, very hard because I was raised in a very harsh religious environment that almost everything was sin except eating and go on to church.
And even that with the cokes and everything was boring.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, our thoughts have changed. I have learned, as I'm sure you have, that love really is unconditional. That grace really is amazing, that the plan, if I dare use the word inclusive, the plan is much more inclusive than I thought.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a little girl in our little country church in Walnut Grove, Kentucky. I remember an evangelist came into town, and he preached that there were only going to be 144,000 people in heaven. In all of time that made it, it was 144,000. And of course, you know, my mom said, she said, every time just about if there was an altar call, she said, I'd look down and see your little behind in the altar, and you would be crying as a child, because I was so tender and so afraid the rapture was going to happen and I wasn't going to make it, you know. So, but when he said that 144,000, I thought, knowing in my little brain, there still had been billions of people on the planet. And I knew I did not stand a chance. So it was I was raised in such a thing. If you didn't believe like this, if you weren't baptized this way, if you didn't, you know, the way that other people did. But now I have learned, isn't the plan big?
I love that. So I think that largely it might look a little bit different, but religion is still very much like that. There's, you know, it has a different skin on it somewhat to a certain degree in different, you know, cultures, but the underlying concept of it's this or that, you know, is still pretty prevalent. I love that you use the word inclusive, because it is kind of like a scary word sometimes these days. And I also love using the word evolution, because that was such a bad word and still is in so many circles, but I was always very afraid of that word and and obviously, not obviously, but as a kid, I took it very literally, like creation versus evolution, and the two just can't coexist, and I can't even use the word evolution to describe anything else, and I hadn't thought to. And then in the last few years, as I have experienced what can only be described as evolution, creatively, spiritually, on all kinds of other levels, I think, why didn't anyone tell me that this was a good word, that it was a necessary word, that I needed to figure out how to apply it to my life in order to grow and in order to thrive? So I think that's largely what you're talking about too, that there are good things that came out of and come out of spiritual experiences, but without the growth and change and shifting, my dad, he'll be 81 in July, and he suffered a massive stroke last year, and so our lives have dramatically changed since last year, with now both parents being pretty much incapacitated in varying degrees. But when he retired as a senior pastor, you know, of like typical pulpit person, he made these business cards. It was like the first thing he did. And he wanted to have this, or he calls it his organic mission field. And he goes out and just like talks to people. But he wanted these business cards, and he wanted them to say, he wanted to name his ministry, his post-ministry. And he called it Life Shift. And at first we were like, Dad, you know, if we say that too fast, it's maybe a little awkward. And he just was so dead set on it. And to this day, he's got these little business cards and he talks about it all the time. And doggone it, if I don't find myself talking about that all the time now, about the shift, that is something that doesn't happen one time. It's a consistent evolution of, you know, the shifting plates in our lives and in our hearts and in our bodies as we age. And
absolutely,
it's just so important.
It absolutely is. You know, we used to act like even words like salvation, it was an event. I got saved June 13th, 1964, which I actually did. But it's perpetual. It's everything in the kingdom. Everything in the kingdom, it's moving, it's breathing. He is a progressive God. He's ever increasing in knowledge and wisdom and glory and might, all the things that in love mainly. And so why we thought, well, this is the box, this is the thing. If you had this, you know, in the culture I was raised in, you know, I spoke in tongues in 1965 or whatever. Yeah, and I want to go, and it kind of leaked out about 1978 because it was an event. It was this thing. I was filled with the Spirit then. Well, I'm every day filled with love, filled with life, filled with the Spirit of God. I pray that's what I want to be. And I am evolving. I'm changing. There's a transmogrification, if you will. There's a transfiguration that's happening in me. But I understand exactly. There were certain words. Ooh, no, don't say that. Because we couldn't have science and God together. Okay. And to me, that is the thing that's so beautiful together, is science and God. Yeah. Because science proves God every time, and God will prove science. He's not threatened by any of that. And you know, and I understand if you think, you know, the world was created and it was done in 6 days and 6 physical days. Well, when God talks about time, he's going, well, a year is like 1,000 days, a day is like 1,000 years, 1,000 years like a day. A lot of the things we get into the stumbling block of time, where God created time for us. He will get in it with us, but he so functions outside of all that. So, girl, I have a feeling we're kind of on the same path. But the bottom line, do I believe that God created the heavens and earth? Absolutely. I've been out here on this lake for 7 weeks. at my friend's cabin, just doing some writing. I came out supposedly for 2 weeks, and here it is week 7, and I'm still here. And it's fascinating. They have bald eagles out here. They have these amazing hawks, all these kinds of birds. And in the shed next to the cabin, there have been a family of red foxes that they had their 3 little babies, their little kids, and there's, so as I've been watching all this, I'm like, God, there is a grand design with all this. There's such a beautiful grand design. And the grand design is also with us, Crystal. I'm sure I like you more today than I would have at 18. I bet I,
For sure.
I bet I like you more. And I think, because honestly, well, people used to think I was a diva. I wasn't. I was just so bashful. I couldn't hardly talk to anybody.
Yes.
They thought I was this aloof, mysterious person. No, I was terrified, But as we get older, we get more comfortable with who we are in our own skin.
Your filter
I'm an Enneagram 9. You know what now?
Your filter starts to disintegrate.
Yeah. Do you know your Enneagram number? We'll get off on a rabbit trail here for a minute.
So I'm pretty sure I'm a 7, but I'm not a typical 7. I'm an introvert. I have debates with my daughter, right, and one of my really good friends. We discuss this regularly because there's just often times where I think, when I read about 7s or I see people portray 7s kind of in a joking way, I'm like, that's just not me. But there's a lot of traits within that I do resonate with.
I'm a 9. I am a born peacemaker.
Okay. So I thought I was a 9 for a while.
Yeah, well, no, I'm definitely a 9. But the bad thing about being a 9, it's great in some ways to be a peacemaker, but I didn't have the unction and the drive to disagree with anyone in my own career. I have a feeling that that's the one way we were different. You would speak up more than I would, and say, the only way I spoke up was about lyrics, primarily more than anything else. I spoke up because I was passionate about lyrics. But a lot of things that people thought, isn't she nice to work with? No, I was a coward. But one thing I love about watching you is when I went to see you at the last thing there that I saw you, I said, look how brave she is. Look how brave she is. And I want you to know, I so admire that.
Well,
how you are. And you speak your truth. You cut your hair. No, I mean, you are learning to be your authentic self, and even learning who that is.
Well, thank you. I think I am learning that, and I'm acknowledging that it takes a lifetime to learn that. That is something that my mom always said, she would tell me, oh, I've turned a corner. And I used to think, because my mom was in therapy a lot when therapy was not cool. And we didn't talk about it, so much. And now I'm like totally in therapy and love it so much and love to talk about it. But I used to think, this woman is going around in circles, because all she ever says to me is, I turned a corner. And finally, later in life, come to understand that, come to appreciate it, and turn my own corners, because it's so important. So I think I am finding that. I did a record in 2000, was it 2000? 2001, I think, Fearless came out. And I always thought that was so comical, because I've always felt like I'm not fearless. I have lived with fear like at my back forever. And it's only now in the last couple of years that I do feel like, hey, I'm getting there. And I think that's great. But I do think, Reba, that you have portrayed this fearlessness, or at least this courage and bravery as well, because you are sitting here at 68 doing something that is not easy to do, navigating the current landscape of the music industry is nothing short of confusing. And even people who've been in the industry like us for all these years are still like, wait, what now? It's so new. And so to be doing something new after devastating loss and obstacles that you have continued, and moments where you've been knocked down and you're clearly up. You're not on the ground. You're not on your kitchen floor right now. You're beautiful and
Sweet.
And brave, and putting out a record that is so intimate and so personal, and giving the world a chance to hear it again. And I think that I'm so grateful to you for pioneering and paving the way for women like me, because you dealt with everything before me, and you were like the one in the hip high snow, you know, breaking the path to town. So thank you.
Well, you're so kind, but you know what? Joyce Meyer, who I happen to love, she does the thing of do it afraid. You know, and that was the thing that you and I and especially I speak to female artists, we've had to do, is just do it even when we're afraid. Do it when some of the men are telling you you can't. Again, I look to my mother, Reba Rambo, in an industry that she had to fight for everything. She had to fight for it all, as a writer, as an artist, as a musician. She had to fight for it all. So she helped pave the way for me, and hopefully I'm doing that for Destiny, my daughter, and you're doing that for your sweet daughter too, and for Solomon, and I for Israel. But it's not a glamorous thing to be a trailblazer. People almost later on in life, they you know, oh, you're just an icon. I want to go, no, I've got a bunch of cocoa barrels up my nose, because that's what a trailblazer does. You get stuff in your face and all that happens.
Yes.
But I'm so grateful, and I'm grateful that things are changing for women. I'm grateful there's a little spark of light happening, and we get to do, and I'm grateful even at 68, there are some people, some labels and some different ones that are talking to me saying, I think you still have something to say. You still have a song, you still have a voice. So in that exciting.
You have, because of evolution, and because of the fact that creativity still lives in you. And I love the way you described your mom and her obsession with words as food. Oh, that is so great. I mean, you still have that gift, and the gift from your dad of being able to see things very vividly and differently. And I would have to agree with whoever is saying, we think you have more to say, Reba. So.
Oh, you're so sweet. I have loved every minute of talking to you, and we have to do this again. I'm just looking and going, oh, it's gone by so quickly, and hopefully it's inspired not just women but other people to keep on. I mean, no matter what you've been through, and I've been through some stuff, and you've been through some things, but you know what, the Lord, and I'm going to tell you just real quick, right after this divorce, when my husband left, and after 40 years of marriage, bless him, and I was so distraught, and had gone to stay with Destiny and her precious husband Joel, and I would make a pillow person there, because when you've had somebody else in the bed for 40 years, you know, so I made this pillow person, and before the Lord, Crystal, early one morning I turned over expecting to see the pillow person, and there was the Lord in the bed, and he said, I'll be your husband. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. And he smiled at me, and then it was gone. But I have learned that's the kind of Jesus I can sing about, that he won't leave. And I've learned it's as much a threat as it is a promise. He will never leave you. He will never, you can make your bed in hell. And trust me, there were a few times in my life I did that. I just about made a bed in hell. And look who showed up in hell with me. And that's what I'm so grateful to know, that no matter what any of us are going through, that he's there. He loves us. He's not condemning. He's not shaming us. If there are ever the voices of shame, that's never our sweet Jesus. That's never our precious Father. It's just not. I know him. I know his nature, and his nature is life, it's love, it's joy, it's peace, it's goodness, it's kindness, and gentleness. And so I want to encourage anybody that maybe have tuned into our little girlfriend conversation to know that God loves them. He's not mad. And there's nothing you're walking through that he won't take your hand and walk through it with you.
Beautiful. Well, I'm so excited for you and honored to have been able to have this conversation with you on this monumental day.
Yeah. Go
Confessions is out today.
Confessions. See where you get your music streaming. Confessions, Reba Rambo, yay. They
I
can
mean,
even
you
go to
can
Reba
consider
Rambo.
buying it. I know that feels like such a foreign concept to people, but you can still purchase music, you guys.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? We don't go to McDonald's and say, you know, I've got to get out of jail free card here. I've paid 50 cents for a year. No, so it would be nice to, if you appreciate the music. And what the other thing is, the labels that still have other masters that we have that are
Mm,
still in the vault, if they go, oh, people want this, they'll buy it. They'll
yes.
release the other. I've got so many masters that are sitting there that have not been for years and years, 40 years or more, you have
Oh my
not been
goodness.
released. So that would be, I would consider it a personal favor if
Yeah,
they.
so we'll just say this is the first
Yeah.
digital release
Well,
of it.
Lady was actually the first that we had got to get re-released.
Oh, that's
And
right.
now,
Yes.
yeah,
Last year.
Lady, now
Yeah.
Confessions. But I am so thrilled and honored, and I just think you're as cute as a bug.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me. Thank you. I love you.
I love you back, girlfriend.
I'll
Let's do.
talk to you soon. I'm coming to Nashville later this year, and we are going to hang out for
We are
real.
going to get together. Yes, ma'am, we will. I love you.